was wondering why the door was moving because you were behind me. I know. Yeah.
Can I put the, what's the name,
The what?
Wheel of Fortune?
Not here.
Why not? Oh, of course.
I'll move.
Okay, move, because I don't know, he's watching something over there.
Hello.
No.
Hi,
Hello.
Mario.
Hi. Okay, we're on Ayin Zion 77. Rabbi Yochanan said that the tendons that were soft but eventually get hard, nin and alam Pesach, they are considered like meat of the Korban Pesach, so you can subscribe. Remember, you have to have a kazayas of basar for each person subscribed, so that can be included in the subscription. V'od, haTorah chasam amonim she'Yisrael. The Torah, this is talking about if you have a broken leg covered by flesh and the combination of the tendon, it's kosher because the Torah doesn't want Klal Yisrael to lose money. Amalei Rav Papa Rava, Reish Lakish, Visur Deraisa, Rav Yochanan holds that this tendon is not busted. And we're talking about here Isur Deraisa, whether this animal can be eaten or not as treif. And we're worried about financial loss. So Rava initially ishtik. He was quiet, didn't know how to answer. So v'amai ishtik, why should he Rava be quiet? V'amar Rava, hilchas a kavasa dereish lakish b'ani flas. Most of the time, we paskin like Rav Yochanan as opposed to Reish Lakish. Except in 3 areas, we paskin like Reish Lakish, but this is not included in the areas that we paskin like Reish Lakish. So why should Rav have been silent? He could have said, halacha follows Rav Yochanan. Whereas the Shani Achad, Rav Yochanan gabed Reish Lakish. This is a case where eventually Rav Yochanan changed his mind and agreed with Reish Lakish. The Amar Lei, Al takti table Lashon Yochanan Ishona Osa. That he learned the Baraisa in a way that was consistent with Reish Lakish. There was a case of an animal with a broken leg, and it was a compound fracture, so it was sticking out, but the majority was covered by its flesh and skin. Ishtakil kurtaisamine, a piece of the bone flew off. Also, Kamei Dabaya. Shayat Losarigli, he waited 3 yontivs to pass because each yontiv Talmidei Chachamim would come and he wanted to ask their opinions. So Ravada sent the owner of this questionable animal to Rava, the Charifa Sakina, who was very smart. Asla Kamei, the Mishnah doesn't say anything about bone flying off. It just said if it's a compound fracture and the majority is covered, it's kosher. Mali nafal, mali yisei. We make no difference. Some of the bone is there, it's gone. As long as the majority is covered, then it's kosher. We're on Ayin Zion, a few lines above the Mishnah. Let's say there isn't one area of the combination of skin and basar that's covered the bone, but it's in multiple areas. If you add them up, it'll be rov. Or mitroses ma'u. Let's say it's flat. Or mismasmes ma'u. Let's say it's decayed. We have to scrape it away. Echidami mismasmes. Amrav unabreder of Yeshua kol sharoy for kodro. When a surgeon would carve it away by healing, like when we're called to debride like a necrotic wound. But so far the Gemara doesn't answer the question. Iboilu nikiv ma'u. What if this tissue that is covering the bone has a hole in it? Or niklaf ma'u, it's peeled away. Nizdik ma'u was split. Nitul shlisha tachtu ma'u. If only the upper 2/3 remain. So toshma, Domer Ulam Rav Yechlan, or Hareu Kabasar. Skin, when it's covering bone, is like the flesh. So the answer is, as long as it's covered, it'll be kosher. The Gemara says, who says Dilma de Kana Mashcha Didei? Maybe it's only if the skin is like really attached firmly to the bone. Right? There are parts of the bone where the only thing that's on top of the bone is the skin. So there, Rav Yochanan will hold that the skin is like the basar. But maybe not in that area, it wouldn't be considered that. Rav Ashi, Kavina Be Rav Papi, when we were learning in the yeshiva Rav Papi, Iboilon, we asked, Nigder Kimin Tabausmao. What if it's like the tissue's been moved away so there's just a ring around it? So all of these questions are not answered, but we can answer this. I asked the doctors and the chachamim that if you scrape the dead tissue away and it grows back, then it's okay. You have to use a bone, not metal. But only again when you're talking about a bone with the only thing above the bone is skin. Then you can treat the skin that way. Mishnah. You shecht an animal and there's a amniotic sac in the womb. It's kosher. Nefesh hayafet tochlanu. If you're not a fussy eater and you want to eat it, you can eat it. Veina metame, it doesn't metame tumas nevela. Lo tumas ochlin velo tumas nevelas. Most people don't eat such a thing, so it's not considered food. So it won't be metame tumas ochlin. It's certainly not metame nevela because the shchit of the mother is metire that. If you had in mind to eat it, then metame tumas ochlin, avalo tumas nevelas. Now, what about shilya sheyotza miktsasa? Part of the amniotic sac came out of the animal before they shechted it. So asura bachila, that part that came out, including the part that is in the womb, is prohibited. Because once you're always worried maybe the head was there, Once the head is born, it's as if the animal is born. If the animal is born prior to the mother being shechted, it would need its own shechita. Siman vlad b'yishav is siman vlad b'vehema. The amniotic sac is a sign that there was a child there. Just it disintegrated, but it was a child there. Hamivakerish pila shilya. You have an animal that never gave birth before, so this animal would be a bechor, but it gave birth to an amniotic sac. So yashlichana leklavim. You can have ano, you can give it to your dogs. The reason for this, the Gemara will tell us, 50% of fetuses are male. 50% are female. Only the male is the bechor. And then you have a certain percentage that are going to be deformed. So less than 50%, so rove are not bechorim. So therefore you have a no. Now, uve migdoshim, if you have an animal that's hegdish, a female animal that's hegdish, and it gives birth to an amniotic sac, so then both male and female progeny will be kaddish. So there you can't throw it to the dog's tikover, you have to bury it. Vein koivin also b'parshas drachim, vein ton also be'ilan. There used to be a darche emori, a goyish practice, right, it's a superstition, to avoid future miscarriages. They would bury this at the crossing of a road or hang it from a tree. So you're not allowed to do it if they darke emori. Menon Emili. So we learned in the Mishnah that if the amniotic sac is in the womb, you can eat it with the mother's shechita. If it came out, you can't. Menon Emili, how do you know this? The Ton Rabbonon, Kol behema tochelu. It says, V'chol behema mafreses parsa, osa tochelu. The Rabbo says ashilya, that if you shecht a female and there's an amniotic sac there, you can eat it. Maybe even if a part of it was born, Talmud Lemer osa v'lo shilyasa. If it partially came out, you can't eat it. Michti. Anciently below Vlad, there's no amniotic sac or placenta without a child. Then lama likra. We know if it came out, if the fetus head was born, you can't eat it with the shechit of the mother. So the Gemara says, "Einachanami cross mach the balma." The cross supports the logic that we have, but we said it doesn't metamet tumas ochlin. Most people don't eat this. Most people don't eat the hide of a donkey, but if it's soaked for a long period of time, it gets softer. Is that considered an oichel so that it would be metame? Ulama ilu tumas oichlin tanino. Tumas oichlin is not a question. We've already learned this. Ilu tumas nevelis tanina. Where do we learn? Tumas oichlin, the tanya ha'or ve'ashilya, the hide and the amniotic sac of an animal, aim metame tumas oichlin, because people don't eat that. Or sheshloko ve'ashilya shechishavila, but if you cook the hide for a long period of time, or you plan to eat the amniotic sac, metamin tumas oichlin. So we already have a Mishnah. And tumas nevelis nami tanina, bin ivlasa, that if an animal dies, you can't touch its carcass. But only the flesh, loba, or if you touch the hide, you're not tummy. V'lo batzamos, not if the bone. V'lo begid, not the tendons. V'lo pekarnayim, not the horns. V'lo pitlafai, not the hoofs. V'amar Rav Huna, lo nitzchel shason tzike kedera. If you cook them extensively, then they are metame tumas nevelis like basar. So why are we asking it again? Lo ilam tumas oichlin. We're talking about tumas oichlin. V'shayni or chamor de mois. The hide of a donkey is disgusting. So he asked the question: if you cook it for a long period of time, is it removed from the disgusting category? The Gemara never answered the question. Then we said shilya shiyot. So if the amniotic sac came out before the animal was shechted, then you can't eat the amniotic sac after the shechit of the mother. Rabbi Lazar. Lo shanu elo sheni mavlod. That's only if you don't find a fetus there. Aval yeshi mavlod, and the fetus is there in the womb, and the head didn't come out, ein choshen l'vlad acher. We're not worried that there was like a twin there, and therefore the fetus that's in the womb is permitted with the shechit of the mother. However, Rav Yochanan Amar, bein eini mavlod, bein yeshi mavlod, whether we see a vlad in the sac or not, choshen l'vlad acher. We are concerned there was a twin, and that it was born. So the amniotic sac cannot be eaten. The Gemara says, "Eini." Vam Rav Yirmiyah lechon Ram Rabbi Lazar. Did Rabbi Lazar want to be more machmir? He's more lenient. When do we say that if it comes out before the shechita, you can't eat it? There was no vlad connected or attached. Aval kshura b'vlad. If there was a fetus in the womb, then we don't worry that there was a fetus that we don't see. The only thing that is prohibited is if you have an amniotic sac that comes out no fetus. Then we say it's prohibited. But if there's a fetus identified in the womb, we don't have to worry that maybe there was a fetus in that amniotic sac that came out, there was another fetus, and the fetus inside the womb would be permitted. That's why when Rabbi Lazar added his statement, it was l'chum. Tanya Kavasid Rabbi Lazar, a woman has a miscarriage, it looks like an animal. Vishil Yimon, and there's an amniotic sac. Bisman Shekshurban, if the amniotic sac is attached to the fetus, ein choshen vlad acher. We're not worried that there's another vlad in that sac. And therefore, she doesn't have tumus yoledes, because as long as she's already bleeding, because she didn't give birth to a human being. But there's a ilachomra. I'd say that there might have been a twin that dissolved in the amniotic sac, and therefore she has to keep tumah. Shani omer shemani muach spiritual shilya. Maybe the embryo dissolved, or shemani muach shilya shel spear, or even there was another amniotic sac that got dissolved. The case in the Mishnah of hamavakeresh pila, an animal that never had given birth. And if it gives birth to an amniotic sac, you can throw it to the dogs. And this is the explanation. My time. Amravika Breder Vami. Rov Bemis Yoldo is Tovra Kodesh B'Pchayra. Most animals give birth to a male, which could have Kedushas B'chor. But miyut behemoth davashen kadosh b'chor. Even if it's a male, it might have a defect. My new nidmeh. Let's say it's a mutation. A sheep gives birth to someone who looks like a goat. Even if it's a male, so there's a minority that would be born that way. And the chola yoldus mechtas chor mechtas nekefis. In general, male to female is 50-50. Samach miyut didmidul mechtas nekefis. If you add this minority of the mutations to the female, then you have the majority that are born not a bechor. That's where you can treat the amniotic sac with the bizoin of throwing it to the dogs. But the Mishnah said, if the animal was hegdish, so that the vlad, whether it's male or female, is also hegdish. So there you have to treat that with respect and bury it. My tumaruba bar migdashu. Whether it's a male or female, it'll be hegdish. But we said you don't bury it at the fork of a road or hang it in a tree. Ein koivenoisa. Because of darche amoiri, superstition, right? Don't let a black cat walk in front of you. Don't walk underneath a ladder. All of these superstitions is asr midarche mori. If you remember, we learned this in the Tzorba, in I think volume 1, way back in Yoredeya. We learned all about these practices, what you can do, what you can't do. It's 21 volumes ago. Each volume is 300 pages. We've learned almost 6,000 pages of Tzorba. We started Tzorba in 2018. So we've been learning Tzorba for almost 8 years. It's a lot of...
as long as you don't give us a bechin on it, I'll be fine.
Right. Well, we should be chayzer.
Well, I think you should give a
Should
chazal.
be, yeah, should.
Okay. Abai v'Rabbi Domer Tavayu. Kol dover sheyesh bo refuah. Ein bo mishum darchem. If any of these practices had medicinal benefit, then you're allowed to do it. Ein bo refuah, yesh bo mishum darchem. If there's no value to it medically, so they give examples. Rashi says, drinking a certain beverage or a certain medicine, or even saying an incantation over a wound. If it helps, you can do it. But you're not doing it for healing a sick person, like when you hang this placenta on a tree, Rashi says, Kagon kivros, or burying it at the fork of the road. That looks like nichush. Nichush is magic. Now let's call it sorcery, witchcraft. Right? You're doing something there to affect something there.
So there's no shot.
That's not medicine. Medicine is doing it on the sick person themselves. That
There's no shilas on
would
a
be okay. They didn't say anything about kameh. Didn't say kameh. It said mashke sam olach. Lachash is an incantation. I don't know if you can derive a kameh from that. There were certainly plenty gedolim that would use kamehs.
Kameh is right.
Yeah,
But kameh is a special it's I don't know.
Well, it's holy names. It's lachash. I'm sure that I think we learned that back then too. Freit the Gemara Vatanya, Ilan Shamashir Perosa. You have a tree, and the fruit is being dropped too quickly before it gets ripe. Sakro b'sikra v'tono bavoni. They would paint it red, hang rocks on it. Now, l'chura, this was a practice of the Amorim. So bishul matono bavonim. So by hanging a heavy weight on a tree, so its vitality is sapped, so it will slow down the ripening of the fruit. That seems to be just like a farming thing. Elasoikra b'sikra, but painting it red, amai, that's not helping. Well, why would that help? Oh, people would see a red tree and they would daven for it. That's okay, says Rashi. And where do we see this? Keditanya. People always, sometimes they don't want to tell people that they're sick. The Gemara is going to give us a proof now that it's appropriate to let people know that you're sick. Kedetanya, v'tamei tamei yikra. The Mitzorah needs to call out publicly, I am Tamei. Tzarech l'dir l'rabim. V'rabim avakshim l'vrachmim. So that people will daven for him. V'chein mishi yirabo dover. Any tzara. Tzarech l'dir l'rabim. V'rabim avakshim l'vrachmim. Amravina, Kiman Talin and Klufsa Bedikla. They used to hang dates on a palm tree where the fruit was, they were dropping the fruit off of the tree before it was ripe. Kiman Kiaitana. It's mainly to inform the public that they need to daven for this tree. Listen, if you can get people to daven for a tree, you can certainly get people to daven for a person. Okay. So Vespino, next parak. It's a good parak.
What time tomorrow?
Tomorrow, 5 o'clock.
Okay.
5 o'clock. And then in shul, what'll be 6:30, Mario?
Roughly. We didn't get the thing yet.
Yeah, but there's no, unless he's going to talk. You let us know.
Not usually.
Not usually. Yeah, but it's before Tisha. Maybe he will.
Oh, maybe. Okay.
Okay, Ernie,
We'll let you
Yeah,
know
okay.
tomorrow.